We can't step back from what we know is right. So let's shine our light. Oh, let's shine our light. We won't listen to what they're saying. We know it's just love that we're giving to this place that we call our home. We can't change what's been done, but it's still our run. We are one with the world. We can make a brighter tomorrow. Together make a change. It's our life. We can't step back from what we know is right. So let's shine our light.
Catalyzing Change Week 2024 is building the social innovation sector from the 6th to the 10th of May. Players of the social innovation sector, from knowledgeable academics paving new paths to government champions igniting policy shifts, have curated over 100 action-oriented sessions hosted from more than 30 countries in a mix of up to 6 languages. The outcomes of these sessions is intended to drive the development of a highly impactful sector. The goal of CCW 2024 is to tackle the challenges of the sector and embrace solutions that will bridge the gaps in policy, behaviors, and mindsets through innovation and collaborative action. Let's create lasting change together. Register for CCW now and check out our events calendar at catalyzingchangeweek.catalyst2030.net.
Hi everyone, welcome to another session of CCW. If you could include in the chat who you are and your organization and where you are calling from, it would be great. And now I'll pass the word to Monica.
Thank you, Ines. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm pleased to present, to be the host of this session today. And a couple of friends of mine that are here with us, and we're just waiting for Francois to arrive. He's joining now because he was at another session, so he'll come.
I'm here.
But he's going to. You're here.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing you. Good. Good. Great. Great. So Ines, can you please show the slide? I'd like to introduce everybody and then start with Marcel. So today we have here my friends that are speaking about the G20 for impact and how we are planning to assure the social innovation agenda at G20 in South Africa in 2025. So Marcel Fukayama, which is the coordinator of the G20 for Impact and the co-founder of Dynamo Impact venture builder here in Brazil, but he's a citizen of the world. And Gilu, your name is wrong, but Billy Mombiria, who is the co-founder of Catalyst 2030. She's a social entrepreneur and an activist for this social innovation sector, and Gustavo Westman, who is now the leader of G20 Social, which is the engagement group track, and he's also the special advisor for international affairs at the presidency of Brazil. And Dr. Francois Bonici, who is the director of the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, and also head of social innovation sector of the World Economic Forum. And with us also is Leah Seligman, who is the Chief Change Catalyst and intern Chief Executive Officer of the B team. And welcome, everybody. And I'd like to start this session with Marcel and asking you, Marcel, and yes, please, thank you, Ines. And asking you, Marcel, how did you imagine to start this coalition of G20 for Impact? And what does it aim to achieve?
Thank you, Monica. Hello, everyone. Good day. I'm delighted for being here with you in the CCW, the Catalyze Change Week. And I'm delighted here with this incredible lineup of speakers and fellow travelers towards a new possible world, more inclusive, effective, and regenerative. And first of all, I'd like to express also my solidarity to my country fellows in south of Brazil who are suffering from a disaster caused by the climate emergency that we are going through, and many other people across the planet, Dubai, Texas, India, and many other places. So indeed, we have a sense of urgency. And this conversation is very important because we are talking about, if not the most relevant, one of the most relevant multilateral spaces, the G20, the group of 20, or the group of 19 countries plus two communities that gathers 2/3 of the global population, 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the international trade, and 80% of the greenhouse emissions. So anything that we do and talk about systems change, we have to talk about G20. So this space is very important, and G20 is currently under the Brazilian presidency, and since the beginning of the year, the end of the last year. So we took over the presidency from India, and we'll pass over to South Africa. These three countries combined are part of the Troika. In the Brazil's presidency, the G20 will be presented by Gustavo. Basically, considering G20 as a very powerful platform to promote systems change, we thought that by orchestrating a global coalition of different organizations at national and international levels, we could propose concrete recommendations to foster an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system. So in collaboration with different organizations, including Schwab Foundation, Skoll Foundation, Catalyst 2030, B Team, Bill Lab, Sistema B, and many other organizations, reach over 1 billion people across the planet, we created a G20 for Impact with three main goals. The first one, to qualify the debate and build the social capital around new economy in G20 under Brazil presidency. So the second goal is to embed concrete recommendations, proposals to G20 working groups with special focus on sustainable finance working group in this finance track of G20. The Sustainable Finance Working Group has four main priorities, including the global governance for climate funds, including funding and financing just transition, including sustainability reporting for SMEs and emerging markets, and also financing nature-based solutions. These four main priorities are totally aligned with many of the coalition's members' proposals. So this second goal is to articulate, orchestrate, coordinate these proposals in order to make sure that we have a very orchestrated contribution, and concrete, effective contributions to the working groups. The third goal is to build continuity. 75% of G20 is about continuity. So we need to assure that South Africa embeds this agenda in the next year's G20. So this conversation is also important because we have here our friend Francois, and we've also been working with our fellows in South Africa, Catalyst members, B Corps, Impact Investors, and many of other ecosystem players in South Africa to get together with the South African Sherpa to assure that this agenda to foster climate action, to foster just transition, and many other elements for this new economy is also embedded in the South Africa G20 agenda. And also, Brazil has an important moment in this multilateral agenda. Beyond G20 this year, Brazil has the opportunity to host BRIC plus COP30 next year. COP30 will be a very important moment because not only we have the opportunity to review and assure the NDCs, the national determined contributions, but also to assure and accelerate to foster the phase-out plan of fossil fuel, which was, by the way, endorsed or re-endorsed last week in the G7. So yesterday we had the G20 meeting in which Gustavo here also was part of the hosting session, in which we had an important debate about climate emergency. And we have the tremendous opportunity to also push this phase-out plan in G20 under Brazil presidency. Can you imagine the 21 largest economies in the planet accelerating the phase-out? This is absolutely crucial to meet Paris Agreement and to address climate change. But just to wrap up, I think in the G20 agenda that we are working on, we have important propositions. So we have propositions to tackle mainly inequality by taxing super rich, by allocating part of the military spending to global education, by creating legal frameworks and legal identities for these new segments, new economic segments, by creating a new sector like the social innovation sector, by doing many other concrete proposals like point of acupunctures to foster an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system. And our next steps are first, to gather again the plenary of the G20 for Impact in July to deliver these proposals. And we are collaborating with Professor Muhammad Yunus to deliver in person these proposals in Brazil in the early second half of this year. And also take advantage of the UNGA, the UN General Assembly in New York, together with the international civic society, and build global social capital for this agenda. And finally, get together in Rio de Janeiro a couple of days before the Leader Summit. During the G20 Social Summit, Gustavo will tell you a bit more about this remarkable gathering, and get together to celebrate and pave the way towards this continuity. So thank you so much, Monica. Pass back to you, and looking forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you very much, Marcel. It's very good to see your enthusiasm in this moment, that historical moment that we have here in our country, but not only in our country, in our planet. So now I would like to pass the word to Gustavo. And Gustavo, can you tell us what are the plans for G20 Social Summit, and what do you believe is going to be the main legacy of this presidency? And how do you think and you are working to have this legacy continuity to South Africa too?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Monica, always a pleasure seeing you, Marcel, Giroux, and everyone who's here today. It's a really great pleasure to be here. Well, Monica, those are actually pretty interesting and complex questions that would demand a long time. I'll try to be brief in order to put things into perspective. But I believe we are doing something quite new and innovative during the G20 presidency. So let's try to address these points. So I believe Brazil has started by doing something. I mean, we centered our points when we decided on the themes that we chose for the G20 presidency. Okay, so by choosing the fight against poverty and hunger, the sustainability in its all dimensions, and the reform of global governance, I believe we kind of found some common ground. So regardless of the polycrisis, the conflicts, and the polarization in the world, we kind of, chose some topics and items or themes that are common sense somehow. No one in the world would say, I'm against the fight against poverty, okay? But to put that into practice and turn that into reality was the biggest challenge, in fact. We started innovating in several sectors, by the coordinating between the tracks, by changing the format of the documents, making them more concise and more focused and more precise. But I believe the biggest innovation is in the one that relates to social participation. I think what Brazil is doing is something completely innovative in G20 context. Like this conversation we are having here, the access civil society is having to government actors, the coordination between the engagement groups, the opportunities for new ideas. This is something completely new. And by being new, it also brings lots of challenges. Like we don't know, we're doing something new. So we don't have reference, we don't have where to compare or things to compare. So what are we doing? Is that right? Is that wrong? And that's another reason for which we need civil society together with government in a coordinated move in order to better address the challenge the world has been going through. So the social G20 in its complexity, it involves not only all what I've already said, but in my opinion, it goes beyond that. We're talking about new mechanisms of social participation in foreign policy in a broader sense. So we are rediscovering how to make it more effective, how to increase the basis of social participation. That's a very important thing. So historically, social participation in foreign policy has been limited to some selected and key actors with access to power, right? Now we are trying to increase and bringing these agendas to new actors, to new players, to the suburbs, suburbs has a different meaning in Brazil, to the peripheries, to the favelas, we are also trying to bring new voices, but also trying to make the incidence of these voices concrete. Again, historically, advocacy has been going on forever, but we're trying to create official channels or more transparent channels to say, you can really make a proposal and we'll listen to that. So in this sense, beyond the coordination between engagement groups, beyond creating new channel access to government actors, we've already launched a process that will lead to the G20 Social Summit, okay? That is a strategy that aims at creating opportunities for a broader, let's say, a wider range of social actors to engage in G20, regardless of having access to the engagement groups or to some specific channels of power. So this process has already started. We have created a organizing committee, which has half government actors, half civil society, mostly social movements. And we are focusing on the three axes defined by President Lula, right? The ones I've already mentioned: fight against hunger and poverty, sustainability, and reform of global governance. And the idea is to create a solid enough process that we arrive on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of November in Rio to consolidate these opinions, but beyond that, to have enough critical mass to ensure that we will have a solid basis of social participation to give to South Africa in order to keep the legacy. So the legacy thing, and I'm wrapping up also now. By doing something new, we don't know what's going to happen. So we need to engage South Africa to keep these processes, to keep these agendas moving on, to keep them alive. that will be crucial, especially considering that, and with all due respect, I don't know how many people from the US are listening to us, but we may have a Trump administration that might be tough for G20 2 years from now. So we need to ensure that we will have enough critical mass to say, okay, civil society now is effectively part of G20, and we want to keep moving on these agendas. So we are already engaging with South Africa in order to make sure these things will happen. We are engaging lots of processes and methodologies that would take a lot of time to explain, but I'm open to that. So whenever you need me to explain that, so get in touch and we'll get deeper into that. But just to finish, the idea is it's a process. We're starting a process. We have to see it as a process, an ongoing process, a live process. So it won't finish now. It's starting now, actually. So what's going to happen is to be seen. All right. And that's it. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with all you guys.
Thank you, Gustavo. It's been amazing to see the work you have been doing. It's a lot of work and a lot of patience too. I was there where you were yesterday at the plenary yesterday with the social and civic society. So I know it's been a lot of work and you've been doing a great job, you and all of the leaders there. And now I would like to ask Giroux to tell us what is the social innovation sector and why is it so important to this new economic model, and leaders of the G20 should pay attention to that.
So, hi, everybody. Hi, Gustavo. Hi, Francois, Marcel, Monica, Leah. Nice to meet you. First of all, I would like to really compliment the Brazil G20 presidency because I think, as Gustavo said, it is a very bold step to include social innovators. And I know how difficult it is because, well, I have been working with the G20 right since its inception. And to make anything happen is really a change. So having such an open government is fantastic. So hats off to all of you. Many of you may have heard yesterday, we had Felipe Haas. He was there at our inaugural session, and he said that he would really like to partner with Catalyst to see how the change can happen, to see what we need to bring forward, and actually openly later invited Catalyst to give a statement, which of course will work with Marcel and Monica and Francois and our whole membership, to give a brief statement on the main aspects that are there. What is the social innovation sector? Actually, the social innovation sector comprises of everyone on this Zoom link on the screen just now. We define social innovation as people who want to make a positive impact in society and cut across all sectors. So be it a B Corp, which is really primarily focused on impact, and I'm saying that because you're here, Leah, or Gustavo, you are a social innovator in many ways, right? Francois, of course, and now if I say Francois in his academic hat, was a path-breaking social innovator who wrote about his book, with systems work. Those of you who haven't read it should read it. So I will say that. And then we have Marcel, who has bridged a lot of things, is now chairing Catalyst 2030 among his work with Dynamo, with B Corp, with everybody. So sort of bringing all the actors together also. So the social innovation sector is people who put impact at the forefront, who put communities at the forefront, and who want to bring about social change. So Gustavo, they are your primary actors to partner with in Brazil. That's one. The economy that we want to bring about, rather than saying capitalism, socialism, and getting caught in any ism, is saying, let's give solutions to the people and the planet. So this group of innovators are solution finders. They are actually the best group that Brazil or South Africa or anyone could take forward. They are the best group because social innovators have the scalable solutions. So if you want to have the fight against poverty and hunger, I'm like partner with the social innovators because we have solutions across everything. You know, you want to be able to have sustainability, we have scalable solutions among that. And just the session before we were with COP, where they said, please give us the solutions so we can include them. So it will be a really nice circle to close. Global governance, I know at least a dozen members in Catalyst with alternate models to global governance. So all I'm going to say is that Catalyst, as the largest body of social innovators globally, has the solutions which are needed to partner with the G20. And that's what it is. And that's why Monica has me here and the operator on this call. Schwab Foundation is a co-founder. Marcel leads the Brazil chapter. We are working with the B Corp. So it's everybody here. And Gustavo, you know, we've been working together for a long time. So it's really nice. Back to you. I can go on and on, Monica, but back to you.
I know you're very enthusiastic of this too, and you've given all of your blood, sweat, and tears to this, and we are very appreciative of that. And yes, Catalyst and social innovation is in the core of this change. So I'd like now to pass over to Lee, and I know, Leah, that you, just a second, came call right now. Sorry. And so Leah, it's very good to have you here with us. And I know your team have been working hard to present the recommendations for G20 for Impact. And it's mainly regarding new incentives, tax incentives to finance nature-based solutions. And not only, but it was the main focus of the recommendations. And I'd like to ask you to elaborate a little bit more about this and how social innovators and impact innovators, good impact innovators, can leverage this recommendation. And also the G20 leaders should pay attention closely to that recommendations that will bring us to a new economy, more equitable, inclusive, and regenerative. Thank you for being here.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. And I would just like to say it's a little after 6 in the morning in California. So if anything doesn't make sense, email me, reach out, and I apologize. But it's wonderful to be here. And Monica, thank you for facilitating this great panel. Marcel, for all of your leadership, bringing all these different groups together, and for everyone else. I mean, this is an inspiring way to start the day. The B team is a group of about 30 global business leaders. It was started by Richard Branson and Jochen Zeitz and Guilherme Leal. And the real role of B team is to bring a progressive voice of business to drive a more sustainable, equitable future. And we have, incredible leaders around the world. And what we've been thinking about over the last year is how do we create those guardrails? The commitment is there. We have a lot of companies standing up to say we want to move further, faster, but the underlying incentives in the economic system are acting as headwinds, slowing people down. And so when I think about the leadership opportunity that the G20, around the G20, in particular with Brazil and South Africa holding this agenda, I think we have a moment where we can actually finance that just transition. And there are a couple of places that we're looking at. Number one, multilateralism is absolutely fundamental to functioning business. And so the more we invest in these processes, what you're doing to innovate, Gustavo, how we're kind of trying to engage, this is really, really critical for business to be able to do its part in the transformation that we're talking about of the economy. With multilateralism thriving as table stakes, I would say there's 3 areas that we really want to focus in on. Number one, how do we redirect and repurpose subsidies to be in service of this world? And the G20 taking a stand on this could be very, very important, and is what's going to drive the shift in capital flows and the way that we are incentivized to do business. Number two, thriving carbon markets. Voluntary and regulated. But if we can get the G20 to lean in there around pricing those externalities and ensuring that economic models are actually solving for these processes, this will be really helpful to business to move, and will shift the way that we consume. And then the third area is, I know the G20 year after year has really held up and supported ISSB. We believe that common, globally accepted standards for reporting will actually allow us to measure what's happening in different places around the world and allow global businesses to move further faster. So I would love, speaking for the B team, we would really welcome the G20 taking that next step from that sort of commitment to it to actually starting to figure out how we create harmonization around standards globally. So those are the three big areas. Tax weaves through everything, and it can be a lever for shifting these changes. We're not calling for lots more tax. What we're calling for is smarter tax, where we think about things like, do we tax people for hiring or do we tax environmental pollution? And I think that there's different choices that we can make using this really critical tool that will enable and incentivize the right behavior. So again, thank you all. I think that the business is ready for this conversation. We're ready to show up strong. And in particular are excited about the leadership that Brazil as a natural capital superpower can play driving this conversation forward.
Thank you so much, Leah. Indeed, your recommendation is very inspiring and is working with other recommendations that we got from members of the coalition. I believe we'll have a very concrete and solid document to show to G20 leaders. And that's what we are aiming at, as Marcel said, and with all the work that Gustavo is doing, I believe it's going to be very productive and effective indeed. So now I would like to ask Dr. Francois Bonici, who's a good friend also, and is been working a lot as Geru with all his sweat, blood, and tears in this social innovation sector. And for a long, long time, and it's been a privilege to be close to him during this time. And Francois, first of all, I would like to congratulate you from the launching of the report of social enterprise and how this is not a niche anymore. It's really a new economy emerging. And I'd like to have you talking to us a little bit about it, and how do you think the G20 leaders are going to respond to this report, and how we can make them listen to what you have to say. And also, as being a South African, I would like to know how do you think South Africa is taking this stick from Brazil and knowing that they have very important role in this political and economic environment globally. And I'd like to hear your thoughts around it and how we can make this legacy and ensure the continuity of this agenda in South Africa in 2025. Thank you.
Obrigado, Monica. Good to be here. Lovely to see everybody on this panel, and in the audience there's some really great colleagues, part of this ecosystem in the audience as well. But first of all, just to say, first of all, to Marcel and Monica for really establishing G20 for Impact as a really important movement. But to be able to work with a partner like Gustavo and the Brazilian government, I think is really, the timing is fantastic. I think you're setting a legacy, hopefully for future G20. So we'll work on that. I'll make some comments, and there's some people in the audience that might also want to comment on South Africa. But Gustavo, thank you so much, I think, for your leadership here, for creating the space for both participation and recommendations, I think is critical. And we look forward to hopefully coming to Brazil, at least in November. So maybe a couple of things. So in our role, so the Schwab Foundation, for those who don't know, is a sister organization of the World Economic Forum. We've been around for more than 25 years, putting social innovation in its broad form and all of the actors in the social economy on on to the global agenda. The World Economic Forum, of course, is an international organization for public-private cooperation. And in that realm, our job is to really surface what's happening in this sector now and to try and position it into the economic mainstream discussions. And so part of that report was really to take the data from the sector over the last 10 years from more than 80 countries where there have been national studies, national registries, individual studies around the scope and scale and size of the social enterprise sector, in the various definitions, and trying to come through with some homogeneity of what we're measuring to look at, an estimation of 10 million social enterprises in the world, 3% of all companies that have a clear constitution, mandate, certification, etc. in this that prioritizes purpose before profit. So that obviously looks very different in different parts of the world. But to recognize that that's creating 200 million jobs with more than 2 trillion in annual revenues, which means that it's larger than the advertising industry, the fashion industry, and suddenly saying, of course, that's cutting across many industries, and that's really the next level of where we need to understand the data. We don't want to see it necessarily as a separate sector, but actually integrated. And I think that's the way the Brazilian government are also opening their doors to really understand that. The different incentives that Leah and others spoke about, I think, are about integrating these business models and approaches within every industry. But I think it was important to showcase the scope and size of this, and also the driver of inclusion, so that 1 in 2 of these are led by women from the data that we have seen that kind of speaks about that. So that's all really powerful. It's not making an impact argument, it's making an economic argument, which I think is important. We've been trying to make the impact argument for a very long time, but I think we need to use all of the data to really try and argue for countries that want to see economic development, but find ways to actually make that inclusive and sustainable. So, so our job, and so when it comes to G20 in terms of recommendations, this also shows us, the need also for the data collection. While we need the instruments, we also need to lay the groundwork for the future. So we need to understand what we're talking about. We need to know that if we're going to put in new incentives, if we're going to put in new policies, we actually need to know how is that going to help or not help. So we also need to know where we're starting from. So kind of understanding and having a good set of data and research will help us know, are we making progress? Are we not making progress? And there's some gaps in the world, certainly, that some of the G20 countries can support. We know there are many champions within the G20 for this sector, and so very much would like to, see Brazil's leadership actually mobilize and galvanize some of the other countries, which I think will be important. And I know through Catalyst and through Marcel, that's already happening and really important. And as Blair pointed out in the comments, also the alignment of the groups. And so kind of one place where we feel we can play a significant role is the B20, where the World Economic Forum has had a long established role. President of the World Economic Forum opened the B20 in Brazil. So, that is a long standing where many of our members go, and we are able to then help present some of these recommendations and help with some of the alignment across the engagement groups. Again, we're going to be working in coordination with all of you. Again, there are recommendations around specific legal status and procurement incentives. We know both in the public and private sector, procurement is a huge lever for unlocking capital. While we can have new investment funds, which I think we're going to obviously, will help to unlock and scale some of the actors in the sector. Procurement is a big lever that, I think has been there, and there is some good technical work that's taken place on unlocking procurement. Maybe I'll leave it at that. Of course, we're all here to transform the whole economy and not just support this sector, but I think we're working in the way to look at that as an integrated approach. And then maybe just one comment on the transition to South Africa. I know Yogi is here, who's working with the Catalyst chapter in South Africa closely with Luvuyo. We have a couple of, the current status is there's elections in South Africa on May 29th. And so the priorities have not fully been set yet. We, as the World Economic Forum and Schwab Foundation, have established contact with the G20 Sherpa. There is an advantage in that he actually used to work for a social enterprise in South Africa as the COO before his government career. so he understands the sector. We've already put on the agenda. This is one of the topics that, at least from our side, as we work with each G20 presidency, the World Economic Forum has a particular set of topics that we work with as one of the topics that we'd like to continue to support. And so, we obviously will recommend and have already raised the case of G20 for Impact, and Gustavo, your work on the G20 social as something that I think would be important to continue. Of course, Gustavo, you're going to be inviting the Sherpa to Brazil and hopefully exposing the Sherpa's team to this work. And I think we know, those of us who know the South African ecosystem actually has a very rich kind of impact economy and social economy. And so there are a lot of champions there as well. And we have Luvuyo and others and Yogi, who can help to do the kind of championing internally for South Africa to understand, what part of this legacy do they want to take up? What emphasis do they want to give it? There will be a very strong jobs emphasis in South Africa in general, given unemployment status, youth focus. These are, assumptions at the moment, but I think those are all elements that are part of this. And then, of course, the just transition as an important actor, and also a heavy resource-based economy that needs to be making this transition itself. I'll leave it at that, and I look forward to more of the discussion. But of course, we're here to be a partner with all of you in this effort.
Thank you very much, Francois. I know you've been a great partner on this, and last year you were here launching the Unlock Social Economy, translated into Portuguese. So we send it to the Vice President of Brazil. So it's a very important message as well. And we do have one question on the chat that I'd like to address to Gustavo mainly, because Blair, who's with us, she told us that she was at the C20 before, and so one big lesson he had within the C20 and other engagement groups is to align the topics of those groups specifically with the G20 working groups. And if they are misaligned, G20 leaders do not discuss the topics we advocate for. Can you please elaborate a little bit? How do you think the engagement groups are going to be successful on this journey, and to be heard also for the G20 leaders?
Well, thanks for the question. That's very appropriate. Something we've been doing, and we have it in mind. That's one of the biggest issues, in fact. I mean, what we noticed while structuring the G20 social was exactly that. Most of the discussions taken by civil society, including engagement groups, but not only limited to that, were completely unrelated or not connected to those in the meetings and the negotiation boards and rooms. So what we've been doing is that we are trying to bring together negotiators and engagement groups, so in the case of C20, but also all the others, to bring them together and to advocate to other ministries and government agencies that they must, not only should, but they must talk to civil society as part of their missions as lead of the working group. So we've been putting them together. Of course, it's not ideal as it should. Again, we are starting something new, but I believe we're being quite successful in that effort. You will see some complaints, of course, but I would say with great margin of confidence that most of the engagement groups have already been in contact with the leads of the working groups, and they have been aligning their strategies and trying to work together on the same line in order to effectively contribute to the decisions. Keep it in mind, process again, okay? So we're starting the process, but I believe it's working quite well.
Thank you, Gustavo. And I truly believe that your intentions are the best, and you're doing a great work doing that. And it's hard because there are so many demands and coming from different engagement groups and different working groups within the engagement groups. So, what we are trying to do at G20 for Impact is to channel the recommendations and to make it very concrete and make them actionable. Mainly, we want the recommendations coming from the members who are the experts to really make the leaders not just to listen, but to make some action within it. And as all of my colleagues here said before, those recommendations are very, very concrete, and we are the ones that can make it happen. And it's not, as Francois told, it's not only a new sector, it's a new economy that has to talk to all the sectors, because it is within the sectors. It's a shifting way. The paradigm needs to be shifted. So this is our work and effort. And as Blair said, again, I truly believe that bringing South Africa early to the discussion and the debate, and that's what Francois is doing, and we are doing with him, is key to this transition and to make this very successful for the next year, and not only the next year, but to achieve our goals on that. Marcel, would you like to say something? Please go ahead, because we do have to wrap up, and Francois needs to go to another session.
Great, Francois. Back to back in sessions. No, I basically I just wanted to emphasize one important point about G20. And the first thing, we have a global governance crisis in our planet. The post-World War II global governance is no longer sufficient to face these centuries challenges that we have in our planet. So what is the appropriate global governance? We have no idea. We have to rebuild it. And the G20 is the most relevant space today, multilateral space, as we've been saying here in this session, but also it brings coordination to important agendas in sustainable development, in just transition, in nature-based solutions, financing, in wealth taxation, in different agendas. So I think if we take the most important and most relevant, the points of acupunctures agendas to really promote systems change, are all of them in G20. Definitely, it is important, not sufficient, but that's the unique space that we have today to promote global coordination, to foster global governance in our planet today. So it's not the silver bullet, but we need to believe and work to use G20 as an important platform, intersectorial platform involving governments, private sector, civic society. And my second point is that everything that we are talking here is mainly about culture shift. And the challenge is that our sense of urgency may not harmonize with this culture shift speed. So we need to promote structural change. And what Francois did mention about legal framework are absolutely necessary, because what Jeru also said about identify the social innovation sector are basically structural changes to promote a behavioral and cultural shifts towards this new economy. So we need to legally identify these new economic segments. And one of the main propositions that we are putting together in the G20 for Impact are the benefit corporations, a whole new legal identity that allows businesses to behave like B Corps with purpose of positive impact, accountability with their stakeholders, and the commitment with transparency by managing, measuring, and reporting their impact. So purpose, accountability, and transparency. Can you imagine 125 million businesses in our planet behaving with purpose, accountability, and transparency? If we depend on only voluntary adoption, it may not work in the short term. So we need to promote structural shift for that, and the G20 can be an important platform to coordinate these implementations. So this is, the relationship between culture shift and structural change is the thing that I wanted to share, and a call to action that we touch this point of acupuncture.
Thank you, Marcel. Great wrap up, and I invite you to join to the next session of Catalyst Change Week, which Francois is going to moderate. So I'd like to thank Jeru, Gustavo, Leah, Marcel, and Francois for being here today and teaching us a little bit about what they are thinking of the G20 and the G20 for Impact, and all the things that we can do together to make this happen. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.